Our objective, we're on lesson 29. Our objective says I will be able to solve literal equations using inverse operations, the order of operations, and the wall technique. So basically we're using skills that we've been doing with all of the equations in lesson 26, 28, and 23. But now we're dealing with what is called a literal equation, which is an equation with more than one variable. So instead of having this all in terms of one variable like x or a, we'll have multiple variables. The solution for a specific variable will be in terms of the other variable. So we're not going to get x equals 5 or x equals 3. We're going to get something like x equals 2y plus 7. So if you've got two variables, something like this right here, and it says to solve for y, your entire goal is to get that y by itself. To get that y by itself, we're going to use inverse operations just like we've been doing all week. This is a 2x, and this is a 3 right next to that y. That 2x is being added, that 3 is being multiplied. So remember, I'm using inverse order of operations, AMEG, and since this is a 2 that's being added, I want to get rid of addition before I get rid of this multiplication. To get rid of a positive 2x, I subtract it on both sides. Okay? Now, 2x minus 2x, those are going to cancel. I'm going to drop down that 3y. I'm going to have 3y equals. I've got 10 minus 2x. That is not going to give me 8 anything, because 10 and 2x are not like terms. I cannot combine them, so it's just 10 minus 2x. Do not combine them if they are not like terms. Okay? That x does not just magically disappear. You do not combine those two. Now I'm still trying to get this y by itself, and there's still a 3 with it. What's happening with it is being multiplied. To get rid of the multiplication, I use the opposite of multiplication, which is division. So I divide 3. If I divide 3 here, what's good for the goon is good for the goblin. I have to divide 3 here. But I want to divide 3 by this whole thing, by both of these terms. So I'm going to divide 3 here, and I'm going to divide 3 there. Okay? Those will cancel. That gives me y equals 10 thirds. I cannot simplify that. So y equals 10 thirds minus 2 thirds x. That is my final answer. If I could simplify that fraction, I would. Aside from that, I just leave it as it is. Y equals 10 thirds minus 2 thirds x. So again, your answer is going to be in terms of one variable. There were two variables here, and I solved it for y. Same thing here. This is to solve for p. So I notice I have an a and a p. My goal is to get the p by itself. I notice I have a p on both sides. So the first thing I'm going to do is try to get all of the p's over to one side. I'm going to move them to the left because I always like to have my variables that I'm solving for on the left. So this p right here is being added. To move it over to the left, I subtract it. Minus p on this side. Now you have to, if you subtract p on this side, you need to subtract it from something that's like terms with it. So don't subtract it from 2a, don't subtract it from 5, subtract it from this p right here. So minus 1p. Again, that p has an understood coefficient of 1. Over here, these cancel. I've got 4p minus 1p, which gives me 3p, plus 2a minus 5, which equals 6a. Okay? I still have a lot of things over here on the same side as the p. I've gotten all of my p's over to the left side, but these two things I still need to move over to this side. So I'm going to get rid of both of these at the same time. I'm going to move them over here to this other side at the same time. This 2a is being added, so to move it over here I need to subtract it. Okay? This minus 5 is being subtracted, so to move that I need to add it. Okay? You could do them one step at a time, or you could move them both. But what you do to one side, you've got to do to the other side. So since I subtracted 2a over here, I need to subtract 2a over here. Since I since I added 5 over here, I need to add 5 over here. Now, I put this under this 6a because those are like terms. Here, these have canceled. If I subtract and add the same number, we know they cancel. All that's left on this side is this 3p. On this side, I've got 6a minus 2a, which gives me 4a. I'm just combining like terms. And in this plus 5, I cannot combine those two. So it's just 4a plus 5. To finish, I still have this 3 written right next to this p, which means multiplication. To get rid of that, I use division. So I divide by 3, divide by 3, divide by 3. Okay? If I'm dividing by 3 on this side, I need to divide by 3 on that side. Those 3's cancel. I've got p equals. I would simplify these if I could, but there's no number I can take out of both 4 and 3, so it's 4 thirds a plus 5 thirds. Cannot combine 4 thirds a and 5 thirds because they are not like terms, so I leave it just like that. I'm trying to get all of my variables over to all of the p's over to one side and then solve it so that p is by itself. Still using inverse order of operations. Last one we'll do is example 3. Okay, the formula expresses, there it is, Celsius temperatures in terms of Fahrenheit. Find the Fahrenheit temperature when the Celsius temperature is 20. So it gives you that the Celsius temperature is 20. C in this formula stands for the Celsius temperature. So all I've got to do is take that 20, plug it into this equation. 20 equals 5/9 F minus 32. Okay, if it gives you the Celsius temperature, just plug it into the original equation. Now I'm just splitting it down the middle and solving it just like we've been doing all week. Now what I'm first going to do is flip this so that my variable is over there on the left. I always like to have my variable on the left. You don't have to do that to me, it just makes it a lot easier. Okay? When you flip it, keep everything exactly the same, just switch the sides. Okay? Now here I've got distributive property. This is just like we did in lesson 26. 5/9 times F is just 5/9 F minus 5/9 times 32. Okay, I would put that whole number over 1 and multiply that. 5 times 32 would give me 160 over 9, which equals 20. Now I just have a two-step equation. I've got multiplication, I've got subtraction. Okay, first thing I'm going to get rid of, remember, inverse order of operations. You get rid of subtraction before you get rid of multiplication, so 160/9. If I add that on the left side, what I do to one side, I've got to do to the other. Okay, when I add those, these will cancel. This gives me 5/9 equals, 5/9 F, don't forget your variable. 5/9 F equals 20 plus 160/9, which if I put 20 over 1 plus 160/9, okay, I want to find a common denominator. The common denominator would be 9. 20 times 9 gives me 180. 180 plus 160 gives me 340, oops, not 304, 340 ninths. 340 ninths. Now, almost done. I've got a variable written right next to a fraction. Variable written right next to a fraction. That means multiplication. To get rid of multiplication, I use division, so I could divide by that fraction. Dividing by a fraction is the same thing as multiplying by the reciprocal. So I'm going to multiply both sides by 9/5. The reciprocal of 5/9 is 9/5. Those would cross. That gives me F equals. I can cross reduce here. These 9s will cancel out. That gives me 340 over 5. 340 over 5 should simplify to 68 degrees. Let me check that. 340 divided by 5 gives me 68. So my Fahrenheit temperature is 68 degrees. We'll skip the last one. That is all.
Oh, I'm sorry.